Thanks for coming out to my new channel. You're going to be my first special guest on here, Theta Warrior. And last time we had such a great video. There were great results. We both discussed the NASDAQ and S&P, and they both had a massive run the last few weeks. So I'm excited to share some new setups with you. May start to see some rotation. So I'll go ahead and let you start.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on, and I'm super excited that you're kicking off the YouTube channel. And like you said, the last one we did was awesome. So I have big high hopes for you in your new channel. And yeah, let's jump right into these tickers. So first one I was looking at is Micron. I mean, looking at the weekly chart, it's just gorgeous. You've got a big cup breakout, big rounded base that translated into a falling wedge, and then just starting to bounce just above this prior supply level, and is actually breaking out, as you can see right here. So the weekly is really nice looking. You've got the MACD that's starting to curl up. So this is definitely a big high watch for me going into this next week. If we zoom in onto the daily, you can see this was actually the support level I was watching prior, where a little consolidation. We had a bounce there, and we traded this short here. It was a short and sweet trade, and then price was actually able to recover. So this potentially could be a false breakout, which would be a great propulsion for a move higher. And you can see it's pushing above that downtrend line, just like we saw on the weekly. And for me in Micron, the big moving average to watch is the 50. 50 is a moving average I watch on a lot of stocks, but you can see how many times this failed to get over the 50, basically since April of this year, and finally pushing up higher. But the difference is, where we didn't see it in any of these instances, finally it's above this downtrend. So definitely going to be watching this one. This, I think, is a really nice looking chart on both the daily and the weekly. It also has the chip momentum going for it. I mean, we saw Nvidia rip, we saw AMD rip. SMH, of course, is looking really, really clean. And the great part is, so go the chips, go the market. So the fact that the semis are starting to break out, I think, is a really good indicator. And definitely one of my top watches going into this week, Micron.
Yeah, I really like that chart. And just on the weekly, it's one of my favorite setups. Like you were saying, it has that downtrend breakout, and the MACD is starting to curl. Looks like it could possibly cross soon. So I think it's all about last week's high if it can get through.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a beautiful chart. And if it follows suit like the rest of the chips did, this is a big potential. I mean, some of these other chips like Nvidia are, have already made new highs, AMD's at all-time highs. Micron hasn't yet. So I think there's a good catch-up potential play here as well. One hasn't ripped as much as the other. So definitely a good one to watch. The next one I'll jump into is Netflix, which, on the weekly, we kind of had a similar setup, cup and high handle, or rectangular consolidation breakout. This was a sweet move. And what I like about this setup is actually on the daily, you can see I was kind of watching some of these fib levels for the breakout that we saw, and prices pulled back right to that 1.68 extension, which, if you study the fibs, the 0.618 is a big one. And the reason why I like it again is because it's right on top of this prior consolidation level. So you've got two reasons why this may bounce. We may get an impulse bounce, maybe retest that 2.236 level, which is kind of the bottom of this little choppy consolidation area that we saw here. So this is one that I'm watching for a potential bounce higher. Higher resistance is now becoming support type of play. So this is one that I'm keeping my eye on as well. Is Netflix. Another one I'm watching is PayPal, and simply for the fact that this thing is just so oversold. I know everyone is looking for a bounce here, and currently it's a falling knife until it's not, right? I want to see some type of movement. This was a somewhat of an encouraging candle, this green hammer right above this support level, but 2 days they sold it back down. So eventually this thing is going to have to catch a bid. I think this is an interesting spot to see if it does. I kind of like to see it clear this little grouping first before it does. If you look at the weekly, oops, clicked on the wrong thing here. The weekly just shows a nasty loss of support here. Let me get rid of that 50 weekly. And, just 3 weeks of selling. Again, this is the same support level we were just looking at. So if we don't bounce here, I see another one right below it. I'm not running to get into this one super quickly. It may very well continue lower. I'd like to see some type of movement higher, but this is a good spot, I think, to be looking for a bounce. Like I said, a lot of eyes on it, a lot of people wanting to see a bounce here. So in my mind, it's only a matter of time. And I think that in the short term, it definitely is looking pretty oversold.
Yeah, I agree. And it had some flow too, right? Some call flow coming in.
Yeah. Some sweepers trying to buy the dip. So
sorry, I was on mute on the last one. I really liked your Netflix chart because I actually have that one set up too on the weekly, or sorry, on the daily. It also, if you use that pivotal low down by August 4th, I think it was, and draw it up, it's like testing that trend line support as well. So like you were saying, that could be a huge bounce zone from.
Yeah, you're right. This right here, this trend line, totally. So this has been a leader, and it's pulling back now, back to that consolidation. So yeah, I think there is a lot of reasons why we may see a bounce in this area. And you're totally right. PayPal has been catching some nice flow. And I know it's like a really steep angle, but this is somewhat of a falling wedge that's starting to develop. It's more of a knife wedge, which makes sense, falling knife wedge. But certainly this is an area I think to be paying attention to.
For sure. I like that a lot. How you brought that support line all the way from a few months ago, or multiple months ago. Sorry. It just shows how that could be a nice bounce zone.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, if you zoom in, there's like a miniature tiny little gap. This gap here was filled by this candle, but down to this, there is a little bit of a gap there. And, sometimes we'll see support right at the gap or, just above the gap. So there's not a lot of gaps in this chart below. So this is definitely one to watch, this area. And then kind of in the same sense, being very oversold, the other one I'm watching is Snap. And, this thing just got murdered after the earnings report. And, we saw a lot of sweepers buying in this area. And luckily, personally got out of a lot of it here. There was a lot of opportunities to buy the dip down to that, kind of 70, support level. And we saw some nice bounces there. It was a great scalping trade. And incredibly, these sweepers held on this whole time, which is insane if you ask me, but they actually added more down here. They've been buying more. So they think that this thing is way oversold. And to me, it looks like it's kind of starting to curl up. You've definitely got some support there in that 51.5 range. So, can it go lower? Yeah, of course. Does it look very oversold to me from the highs? Yes. So this is one I think to be keeping an eye on for a potential curl higher as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think I had 54 as a previous gap fill zone in May. So I think if it can break above 54 again, that could try this week.
Yeah, absolutely. You've kind of got like a little descending triangle here, that you could connect these kind of highs and make a descending triangle. Descending triangles in my mind can go either way. They're not always going to be bearish. They're not always going to be bullish. I just like to trade them in whichever direction they choose. So simple as that. And it's a funny pattern. You don't see it very often. So I'll bring it up here on the weekly. Classic Bart Simpson, right? You've got a huge move higher, chop, 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 and then a big move lower. You don't see these every day. They're kind of humorous because everyone loves Bart Simpson, right? And Snap just put in a perfect one on that weekly when they got crushed on that earnings.
I love that.
Yeah.
I have to start looking for some Bart Simpson patterns.
Yeah. Very, very bearish when they get played out. So we'll see what it does here. This is definitely a prior kind of consolidation area. There may be some support in here. So looking to see if we're going to get a bounce here in this one here somewhat soon. And then the last one I wanted to look at, which is an absolutely beautiful weekly chart back in line with the semis, is Amat. gorgeous, gorgeous breakout here of your rectangle box consolidation. You can see the last time this one put in a big consolidation breakout, we got a huge rip, you know, from 70 all the way up here to 145. That's a double. You know, again, you've got a similar length of period of time consolidation and a huge breakout candle right there. Now, in my mind, you know, I don't really want to buy it right up here. I'd like to see some type of retracement, consolidation, pullback, bounce at this prior resistance level, you know, something to give me like a bit of a better entry. But, you know, you can see MACD is just getting ready to cross. And again, this is the weekly chart, you know, so MACD, you know, crossing on the weekly is a big deal. And definitely one to keep an eye on. If you look at the daily, you know, this is the same level of the breakout level we were just looking at. It's also a nice big cup, but the daily really shows that it definitely is extended. So, you know, any type of move down here, I think type of, you know, bull flag or falling wedge or anything, I think is you got to be a dip buyer here to this 146, 147 level. So Amat and Micron, I would say, are probably two of my favorite charts going into this week and the coming weeks, truly. Because they've got that chip momentum behind them, and they're both starting to break out on, you know, multiple time frames.
Yeah, I really like that weekly where you threw it back to the 2020 pattern where it broke out last time, because it just shows that there's no reason to pick a top when it comes to a possible breakout here again.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the biggest things that I started doing that really helped me in my trading is just pushing a stop instead of saying, okay, well, this is run to 80, so I need to take profits because it's just gone too far. You know, you could have sold it at 80 and watched it rip to 140, you know, or you could have just slowly pushed the stop and just let, you know, price be your guide. So that was a big, you know, turning point in my trading career, is, you know, realizing that we have no idea how high this will go. And we just want to chase it and, you know, see how far it can take us, basically.
Yeah, for sure. I think holding runners is important on moves like that.
Yeah, 100%. So those are the big ones I'm looking at.
Awesome. So I guess I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah.
Let's see. And thank you so much for that. Those were great charts.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So first I was going to start off with Boeing. It had a great close on Friday. We have a nice double bottom here from this July area. And then you can see here, we had a little trend line break, which what I like, or one of my favorite patterns when we break these downtrends and have this MACD cross. So I had a nice breakout here, then consolidated a while, made another downtrend. So now I'm looking for a possible similar pattern here. We have the MACD cross. It broke out of a flag, but now it's holding above the 50-day and it had a really strong close, and it has this double bottom here. So I'm looking for follow through if it can break above, let's see, this 224.6 area, and a possible first target would be this pivotal high here at 232. So as a play on Monday, if it were to gap up, I like to use these gap fills as a support zone. So if it can hold the 224.5 level, that could be a possible bounce zone. And if it does gap up and you like it, you can use the PM high as another trigger. And what I wanted to compare this to actually was Spotify. This is kind of similar. The other day, there was both these downtrend breaks here, and this one had a nice little flag and it ripped. So we had this downtrend break, it stopped for a while, made another downtrend, and then had a great move. So I'll be watching BA. Sometimes it doesn't have much follow through, but we're finally starting to see some rotation on Friday into some of these down names. So I'll be watching this one for a possible entry.
Yeah, I really like this chart as well. And brilliant comparison, by the way, to spot, because what you just pointed out is spot on. That breakout is super similar. How you had like a really, you know, tight flag that formed right after that downtrend break, and then it just continued higher. I almost got into this on Friday. The only reason I didn't is just because it gapped up and it was Friday. You know, we were focusing on the lottos. So I just decided to see how price was going to respond on Monday and Tuesday before I get in. But really like this chart a lot. The weekly looks great as well. You know, Boeing, you know, maybe it's time for it to take flight. So definitely something I'm watching closely as well.
Yeah, I had this previous line here on the weekly, but you can see this MACD is still curling upwards. So I think it's all just about this Friday's high area. So if it can break above that, I think it could be a nice runner.
Yeah, great chart.
Thanks. And then I'm going to go over to Amazon. So this is one I actually went over on the last video. This was a previous trend line I had a nice run since then. It ended up filling that gap I was talking about at that 34.63 zone. Sorry, I was drinking water. And then it ended up fading that. And I mean, it had earnings and everything, but then they bought back the dip from earnings and now it's forming a higher low. So I like that it broke it back above the 50-day here. It's actually the 10-day through the 50-day here. So those are my two favorite indicators. So now we have a golden cross here. We have MACD crossed again, and it had a great run on Friday. So I'm thinking if it can break above this 35.66 level, then there's a gap right here. So I have this 3,600 level down to the bottom wick, which is 35.80. So if it can get through this gap fill zone, I think 3,700 could be the next target on this one. But like I said, these gap fill areas can be quite hard. We had the test here, which you can see the high day was 34.63, and this was the close here is 34.63 as well. So that was a big level of resistance. So if it can break through that 3,600 level, then I think it can see higher. And also if I bring it over to the weekly, I had this wedge drawn. Normally I use 3 points on my trend line, but I actually had this chart drawn last week and it was using this area as a resistance. So I just kept it there. Bringing it back, it ended up breaking it last week. So I really like this wedge, and it has MACD just about to cross. Like you said, that happening on the weekly is pretty bullish. So if it can break above this 35.66, I think it has a lot more room.
Yeah, I agree. I think that right where it kind of pulled back on Friday is a big spot that I'm watching, that 35.50, 35.60 range, because it's hit there multiple times and pulled back. So if it can clear that, then, game on. It's funny. I saw someone comment on your post, it's time to split, or they need to split this. Man, if they ever announce a split, this thing is going to be trading 5,000 in, no time. So this is just a sleeping giant. This thing is getting ready to wake up, and, above this level here, I think that, things could really get rolling.
That's what I think too. And in these uptrends that we have right now, a lot of times if we were to gap down on this stock, I would use this 35, what the close was, 35.19 area as a potential target if we were to gap down. If it were to break that, then you could try to play as a scalp play for this high. So there's a few ways to play it, but I think this 35.66 is going to be key. And then I have Facebook. This was another chart I posted last week. So I actually I drew this trend line here saying that this could be a possible resistance test this week, and it ended up testing it. Then it broke out and failed. So when we have a failed breakout, I like to use the failed breakout high as the new trigger. So once it broke that 335 area, it had a great run. And you can see how well this 50 SMA worked as a resistance here. It tested it and faded it into the close. So I think that's going to be the big key into the coming weeks, is if it can break over this 50-day area, which we have 346.8 as a level I have for a trigger, has bullish MACD, and it's holding well above this trend line. So if it were to break this low, I would watch this gap fill of the 336, 335 area. So that's a potential bounce area. And then we also have this 10 SMA aligned with this trend line, which could also be a bounce area. But overall, I would like to see it above the 50-day to go long.
Yeah, I agree. And, I'm not much of a fundamentalist, but I will say this move by Facebook into the metaverse, and, the whole name change thing, that is interesting. If the metaverse is really going to be as big as they say it is, a lot of these companies are going to be doing a land grab. You saw Microsoft already make some announcements as well. I mean, Amazon and Apple, I'm sure, are soon to follow, but Facebook has really taken that push to it. So, this could be a huge winner over the next few weeks, months, years. Maybe this dip to the 300, 320s was a gift. So definitely something interesting, I think, in this name change and their company focus as well.
Yeah, I agree. Like you were saying, it's a great dip by here. You can see it's starting to break out of this downtrend here, falling wedge on the weekly as well. So definitely something to watch above last week's high for sure.
Agreed.
And then I'm gonna go over to Airbnb. So Airbnb had a great run on Friday post earnings. They had a busy summer. So now I'm going to be watching for follow through above this earnings reaction high, which is 203.3. So it had this great breakout of this consolidation. It's pretty hard to trade weeklies on this one when you see all this chop, but now it looks like it's moving again. MACD just crossed. So if it were to break out, I'm going to be watching this 209 level over here. You can see it's some highs and lows over here at 209. So I'd be watching 209, and then I'll be watching this all-time high area. And then bringing it over to the weekly. I had this drawn out before. Oh, sorry. It's just a downtrend break. It was a very slow move higher, but had some consolidation here that I pointed out on the daily. It's like a nice little flag here, but a very strong close. And I think there's a lot of flow on it. I typed it into black box and it seemed like there were some buyers into the close for next week as well. So it's definitely one to keep on watch above that 203 level.
Absolutely. I love seeing that black box, by the way. I have mine pulled up all the time as well.
I know, I love it. So easy to use. I mean, I'm still getting used to it, but I love being able to see all these big sweeps come through.
Oh yeah, hugely helpful software. But man, what a candle. Look at that thing. That's huge. That's a rocket. So, I mean, big gap up and go. Obviously, you've got the power earnings gap potential here. Personally, I'd love to see it consolidate a little bit in that 200 range, put in a little pennant for 3 or 4 days before, continuing higher to 210, 220. But yeah, definitely a lot of potential there. If it puts in a wedge, a little tiny falling wedge or a flag, some sort, and breaks higher out of that, I think then, game on.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be great if it could form a flag here, but I love those earnings plays where you can buy the earnings reaction high follow through, because a lot of times those can go back to all-time highs when they're around here, because all-time high is really close. So Expedia is also one that is set up similar to Airbnb. So ones to keep on watch.
Sure, absolutely.
I also have Lam Research, which is similar to Amat that you showed us.
Mm-hmm.
So this one has another one of my favorite patterns, which is a downtrend break here. It's back above the 50 SMA. So I'm going to be watching for a break of the 613 level. It has bullish MACD. Let's see, I believe I'm watching the 622 area, which was this pivotal high here. And then it's also some highs and lows through here. So 622 is going to be a big spot. And then I'm also watching the 638 level, 638 level that also has a bunch of highs. This is a bunch of highs and lows here as well. So I'll be watching 622 and 638 as potential targets. If it can break above 613. Obviously, if it were to break back below Friday's low, then I'd be watching this 50 SMA area again for a possible consolidation, or it would break trend to the downside. So I would avoid calls if it were to break this 50 SMA, but as long as it stays above this trend line, maybe has some consolidation here, could be a nice setup if it breaks Friday's high.
Yeah, I love this chart on the daily. That's a beautiful downtrend break. Like you just said, very similar peer to AMAT, which is breaking out to new all-time highs. So you would think that this would also be, on its horizon, a new all-time high as well. And then again, going back to the black box, this thing caught a ton of flow on Thursday and Friday. I mean, they were sweeping on Thursday the in the money 570s, and then on Friday the out of the money 620s, both going out to January. So they're buying time, and they're buying that higher delta in those 570s. So, and we're talking multi-million dollar sweeps, like one after another. And for a stock that doesn't catch a ton of flow, I think that's like really, it's really eye-opening, really should grab your attention. Yeah. So this is definitely a good one to watch.
Yeah, that's really notable. I think I saw you post like over $1 million on some leaps. So That would be a great one to watch. But sometimes I like to use, you know how I like using those 3-point trend lines. So sometimes I also use them as a projection. So if I were to take this all-time high and use a projected trend line here, if this were to happen this week, you also get this 638 level, which was that consolidation area I mentioned on the daily as a potential resistance. So we'll see if this one can get a run this week. But like I said, it's all going to be about a break of this high for follow through.
Agreed. Another top one to watch for sure.
Yeah, so that's what I have for this week. And I think you gave us some great charts, but we'll see if we get some rotation. I know maybe if they're selling Tesla tomorrow, we'll see if there's like some more rotation into names like Amazon, or if we get some more rotation into Dow. So it'll be interesting to see, but that's what I have on my end. And I'm really happy that you did this that you're my first guest on my YouTube channel. And I wish you all the best this week with your team.
You as well. And thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on the new YouTube channel, and we'll have to have you back and do a follow-up on mine. And then, later on, I'd be happy to come back and do another one with you as well. So again, these are always fun, and best of luck to you as well.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to another one.
Awesome. Cheers.